The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Clarence House as Detective Inspector Sarah Mills approached the grand entrance. Her black shoes clicked against the polished marble steps, each sound echoing through the crisp October air. She had received the most unusual call of her 20-year career just 3 hours earlier. The Royal Protection Service needed someone they could trust completely, someone who understood that what happened today would never appear in any official report. Sarah paused at the massive oak doors, their brass handles gleaming in the morning light. Behind these doors lived Queen Camilla, and according to the anonymous tip that had reached Scotland Yard, something precious had gone missing from the royal collection. The caller claimed to have information about items that belonged to the late Queen Elizabeth, treasures that had somehow found their way into places they shouldn't be. The door opened before Sarah could knock. A tall man in a perfectly pressed navy suit stood before her. His gray eyes were serious, and his expression revealed nothing about what lay ahead. "Detective Inspector Mills," he said in a clipped accent. "I'm James Harrison, head of security. Her Majesty is expecting you." Sarah followed James through corridors lined with portraits of long-dead royals. Their painted eyes seemed to watch her every step. The carpet beneath her feet was so thick it muffled all sound, creating an almost dreamlike quality to their journey through the residence. "What exactly am I looking for?" Sarah asked quietly as they walked. James glanced around nervously before answering. "Items that may have been removed from Windsor Castle during the period immediately following Her late Majesty's passing. Jewelry, documents, personal effects, things that should have remained in the official collection." They stopped outside a door marked with a small bronze plaque. James knocked twice, paused, then knocked once more. A voice from inside called for them to enter. Queen Camilla sat behind an antique writing desk, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She looked up from a leather-bound book, her blue eyes meeting Sarah's with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Detective Inspector," she said, rising gracefully, "thank you for coming so early. I'm afraid we have a rather delicate situation on our hands." Sarah had met many powerful people during her career, but standing before the Queen Consort felt different. There was an elegance about Camilla that seemed to fill the room, yet underneath, Sarah sensed something else. Worry, perhaps even fear. "Your Majesty," Sarah began, unsure of the proper protocol. "I understand there are concerns about missing items?" Camilla gestured to 2 leather chairs positioned near a large window overlooking the gardens. "Please sit. What I'm about to tell you must remain between us. The reputation of the monarchy depends on it." As they settled into their chairs, Camilla's composure seemed to crack slightly. Her hands trembled as she reached for a china teacup on the side table. "2 days ago, I was going through some of Elizabeth's personal effects," she began, "items that were meant to be sorted and either returned to the official collection or distributed according to her wishes. I noticed that several pieces were missing. Important pieces." Sarah pulled out her notebook, then thought better of it. This conversation would need to stay off the record. "What kind of pieces, Your Majesty?" "A diamond necklace that belonged to Queen Victoria. A set of emerald earrings given to Elizabeth by her father on her 18th birthday. And most concerning of all, a small wooden box containing what Elizabeth called her memory treasures." The room fell silent except for the ticking of an ornate grandfather clock in the corner. Sarah could see genuine distress in Camilla's eyes. "I've spoken with the household staff," Camilla continued. "Everyone who had access to Elizabeth's private quarters during those difficult weeks after her passing. Most have been with the family for decades. I trust them completely, which makes this situation all the more troubling." Sarah leaned forward slightly. "The anonymous tip we received suggested that someone might know where these items are." "Do you have any idea who might have called?" Camilla shook her head slowly. "I've been wondering about that since James told me. Very few people know about the missing items. I only discovered them gone myself yesterday morning." "Could you tell me more about this wooden box? What kind of memory treasures?" A smile crossed Camilla's face for the first time since Sarah had arrived. Elizabeth kept small mementos from important moments in her life. A pressed flower from her wedding bouquet, a baby tooth from one of her children, letters from Philip during their courtship. Things that had no monetary value but meant everything to her. Sarah found herself touched by this glimpse into the late Queen's private world. The public had known Elizabeth as a symbol of duty and tradition, but this revealed a woman who treasured simple, personal memories. The caller mentioned that these items might lead to other treasures, Sarah said. Treasures that have been lost for years. Camilla's eyes widened. What kind of treasures? They weren't specific, but they seemed to suggest that finding your missing items would be just the beginning. James, who had been standing silently by the door, stepped forward. Your Majesty, perhaps we should show the detective inspector the room where the items were kept. Camilla nodded and stood. Yes, of course. Though I warn you, Detective, the sight of Elizabeth's empty jewelry boxes still breaks my heart. As they prepared to leave the sitting room, Sarah caught a glimpse of something that made her pause. On Camilla's writing desk, partially hidden beneath some papers, was a small brass key. It looked old, much older than anything else in the modern royal residence. Your Majesty, Sarah said carefully, that key on your desk. Is it connected to any of this? Camilla followed Sarah's gaze and her face went pale. I've never seen that key before in my life. James, how did that get there? The security chief examined the key without touching it. I have no idea, Your Majesty. This room was checked and cleared just this morning. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Someone had been in this room recently. Someone who wanted them to find that key. The missing treasures were just the beginning of something much larger and more mysterious than any of them had imagined. The brass key felt surprisingly warm in Sarah's gloved hand as she examined it carefully. The metal was aged and worn smooth in places, suggesting it had been handled frequently over many years. Along the shaft, she could make out faint engravings that had been nearly worn away by time. James, I need a magnifying glass, Sarah said, holding the key up to the window light. Within minutes, James returned with an ornate magnifying glass from Camilla's writing desk. Through the lens, Sarah could see letters and numbers etched into the metal. ER 1952 was barely visible on one side, and what looked like WC basement on the other. Elizabeth Regina. 1952, Camilla whispered, reading over Sarah's shoulder, the year she became queen. But what does WC basement mean? James cleared his throat. Your Majesty, WC could refer to Windsor Castle. There are extensive basement levels beneath the castle that aren't commonly used anymore. Some date back hundreds of years. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Has anyone checked these basement areas recently? Not thoroughly, James admitted. Most of those spaces have been sealed off for decades. They're mainly used for storage of items deemed historically significant, but not currently on display. Camilla moved to her desk and picked up her telephone. I'm calling Windsor Castle immediately. We need access to those basement levels today. As Camilla spoke quietly into the phone, Sarah noticed something else about the key. The head was shaped unusually, almost like a small crown. She had never seen anything quite like it. The castle administrator will meet us there in 2 hours, Camilla announced, hanging up the phone. He's bringing the original blueprints of the basement levels. Some areas haven't been mapped properly since the Victorian era. The drive to Windsor Castle took 45 minutes through the countryside. Sarah sat in the back of the royal car, watching the familiar landscape roll by while her mind raced with possibilities. Why would someone leave that key for them to find? And what connection did it have to the missing treasures? Camilla seemed lost in thought as well, occasionally glancing at the key which now rested in a small velvet pouch in her handbag. Detective Inspector, she said suddenly, there's something else I should tell you. Something I haven't mentioned to anyone, not even James. Sarah turned to face her. What is it, Your Majesty? The night before I discovered the missing items, I had the strangest dream. I was walking through corridors I'd never seen before, deep underground. Elizabeth was there, but she was young, perhaps in her 20s. She kept saying, the real treasures are below, Camilla. Below where no one thinks to look. James, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, turned around. Your Majesty, you didn't mention this before. I thought it was just my mind processing grief, Camilla replied. But now, with this key appearing so mysteriously, I wonder if it was something more. They arrived at Windsor Castle to find a small, nervous-looking man waiting for them at a side entrance. He carried a leather satchel and kept checking his pocket watch. Your Majesty, he said, bowing deeply. I'm Thomas Whitmore, Castle Administrator. I've brought the original basement plans as requested, though I must say, some of these areas haven't been entered in 50 years or more. Thomas spread the yellowed blueprints across a table in a small office near the entrance. The drawing showed a maze of corridors, storage rooms, and chambers extending far beneath the castle's foundation. Here, Thomas pointed to a section marked in faded ink. This area was used during World War II for storing valuable items when there was concern about bombing. After the war, most items were moved back upstairs, but some rooms were simply sealed and forgotten. Sarah studied the plans carefully. "Mr. Whitmore, are there any rooms that would require a special key like this?" She showed him the brass key. Thomas examined it through his own magnifying glass, his eyes widening as he read the engravings. "This is extraordinary. I've heard stories about a private vault created by King George VI for his daughter Elizabeth, but I've never seen any evidence it actually existed." "What kind of stories?" Camilla asked. "Legend says that when Elizabeth became queen so young, her father had already prepared a secret place where she could keep her most personal treasures. Items that weren't part of the crown collection, but were precious to her as a person, not as a monarch." Thomas continued tracing the blueprints with his finger. "If such a place existed, it would likely be here, in this unmarked section beneath the east wing. The plans show empty space, but that could have been intentional to keep it secret." James checked his watch. "How long would it take to reach that area?" "At least 30 minutes walking through corridors that haven't been used in decades. We'll need flashlights and proper equipment. Some of the passages may be blocked or unsafe." Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They were about to explore areas of Windsor Castle that had been forgotten by time, searching for treasures that might have been hidden for over 70 years. 20 minutes later, they stood at the entrance to the basement levels, each carrying a powerful flashlight and wearing protective clothing that Thomas had provided. The metal door groaned as James pulled it open, releasing air that smelled of age and secrets. "Stay close together," Thomas warned as they descended the stone steps. "These passages can be confusing and some lead to dead ends." Their footsteps echoed in the narrow corridor as they made their way deeper underground. The walls were lined with photographs of long-forgotten royal events, their frames covered in dust and cobwebs. After several turns and what felt like an endless walk, Thomas stopped in front of a wall that looked different from the others. While the rest of the corridor was built from gray stone, this section was made of newer red brick. "This wall isn't on any of the original plans," Thomas said, shining his light along its length. "It was added sometime after the blueprints were drawn." Sarah examined the brickwork closely. Near the center, she found what she was looking for, a small keyhole almost hidden in the mortar between two bricks. "The key," she said to Camilla. "I think we've found what it opens." Camilla's hands shook slightly as she removed the brass key from its velvet pouch. The keyhole was so well concealed that they might have missed it entirely if they hadn't been looking specifically for it. The key slid into the lock with a satisfying click, as if it had been waiting decades for this moment. Sarah held her breath as Camilla turned it slowly to the right. From somewhere behind the brick wall came the sound of ancient mechanisms moving, gears turning for the first time in years. Then, with a grinding noise that made them all step back, a section of the wall began to swing inward like a door. Cool air flowed out from the opening, carrying with it the scent of old wood and something else. Something that smelled like lavender and roses, as if someone had kept fresh flowers in this forgotten place. Thomas shone his flashlight into the darkness beyond the doorway, revealing a small chamber lined with wooden shelves and cabinets. But what caught everyone's attention were the dozens of small white candles placed throughout the room, as if someone had been expecting their arrival. The candlelit chamber felt like stepping into a fairy tale. As their eyes adjusted to the soft, flickering light, Sarah could see that the small room was meticulously organized. Unlike the dusty corridors they had walked through, this space was clean and well-maintained, as if someone had been caring for it regularly. "How is this possible?" James whispered, his voice barely audible in the sacred silence of the room. "Who has been keeping candles lit down here?" Camilla stepped forward cautiously, her flashlight beam dancing across wooden cabinets that lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Each cabinet was labeled with small brass plates, and as she read them aloud, her voice filled with wonder. "Childhood Memories, 1926-1936, she read from the first cabinet. "Letters from Philip, 1939-1947. "Margaret's Secret Treasures, 1930-2002. Her voice caught on the last one. "Things Too Precious for Public Eyes." Thomas fumbled for his camera, then thought better of it. Whatever they found here clearly wasn't meant for documentation or public knowledge. Sarah noticed a small writing desk in the center of the room, its surface covered with what appeared to be recently written notes. She approached it carefully. feeling as if she was intruding on someone's private conversation. The handwriting on the top note was elegant and familiar. She had seen it on countless official documents over the years. It was Queen Elizabeth's handwriting. But the paper looked fresh, as if it had been written recently. "Your Majesty," Sarah called softly to Camilla. "You need to see this." The note was dated just 3 weeks before Queen Elizabeth's death. It read, "My dear Camilla, if you are reading this, then you have found my most precious secret. The items that have gone missing from my official collection are here, where they belong with the memories that made them meaningful, but they are not the real treasure. The real treasure is what you will find when you understand why I kept this place alive with light and love." Camilla's hands trembled as she held the note. She knew. Somehow she knew I would find this place. "But how?" James asked. "Your Majesty, you said the key just appeared on your desk this morning." Sarah was examining the candles more closely. They weren't ordinary candles. Each one was hand-carved with tiny symbols and dates. "These candles tell a story," she said. "Look at this one. It has 1953 carved into it, and a tiny crown. This one says 1981 with 2 interlocked rings. Her coronation and Charles's first wedding," Camilla murmured. Each candle represents a significant moment in her life. Thomas had opened one of the labeled cabinets and gasped audibly. Inside were hundreds of carefully preserved items, photographs, letters, small gifts, and yes, Queen Camilla's missing jewelry, arranged precisely on velvet-lined shelves. "The diamond necklace," Camilla breathed, reaching for the familiar piece. As she lifted it, a small envelope fell to the floor. Her name was written on it in Elizabeth's handwriting. With shaking fingers, she opened the envelope and read aloud, "Camilla, I took these items not to hide them, but to bring them home to their memories. The necklace reminds me of my wedding day, when I wore it and felt truly beautiful for the first time. I wanted it to rest where that memory lives. Look deeper, my dear. Look for the cabinet marked, 'For Future Queens.'" They searched the walls until Camilla found it, a cabinet higher than the others, requiring a small wooden ladder to reach. As she climbed up and opened the cabinet door, her gasp echoed through the chamber. Inside were treasures that no one had seen for decades. A jeweled crown that wasn't part of the official collection, emerald brooches that seemed to glow in the candlelight, and a leather journal wrapped with a blue ribbon. "The journal," Sarah suggested. "Start with that." Camilla climbed down and unwrapped the journal carefully. The first page was titled, "For Those Who Will Come After Me," in Elizabeth's careful script. As Camilla read, her voice filled with emotion, "I have been queen for 70 years, but I have been a woman for much longer. This room contains the pieces of my heart that the public never saw. Each item here carries a story, a moment when I was not Her Majesty, but simply Elizabeth." The journal continued, "Future queens will face challenges I cannot imagine, but they will also experience joys I hope I have made easier for them. In this room I leave not just treasures, but the wisdom of a life lived in service to others while trying to remain true to myself." Sarah noticed another figure moving in the shadows at the far end of the chamber. Her police instincts kicked in immediately. "Who's there?" she called out, her hand moving instinctively toward her radio. An elderly woman stepped into the candlelight, wearing a simple gray dress and carrying a watering can. She had kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Don't be alarmed," the woman said calmly. "I'm Margaret Thornberry. I've been the keeper of this room for 43 years. "Keeper?" James asked, positioning himself protectively near Camilla. Margaret set down her watering can and smiled. "Her Majesty appointed me to this position when I was just 25. My job was to maintain this space, to keep the candles lit, and to add new items as she brought them to me over the years." "But how did you get in and out?" Thomas asked. "That door hasn't been opened in decades." Margaret pointed to a section of the wall that looked like solid stone but was actually a cleverly concealed entrance. "There's another way in through the gardens. Her Majesty had it built so I could come and go without anyone knowing." "You placed the key on my desk," Camilla said, understanding dawning in her voice. "Yes, Your Majesty. It was her final instruction to me. When you became queen consort, I was to wait exactly 1 year, then begin the process of revealing this place to you. The missing items were my doing as well. I moved them here because she wanted you to have a reason to search. Margaret walked to another cabinet and opened it, revealing stacks of sealed envelopes. She left instructions for everything, Your Majesty. Letters to be opened on specific dates, gifts to be given to family members on important occasions, and wisdom to be shared with future generations. How many people knew about this? Sarah asked. Only myself and Her Majesty. Margaret replied. Not even Prince Philip knew about this room, though he suspected she had secrets. She wanted one place in the world where she could be completely herself, away from protocol and public duty. Camilla sat down heavily on a small chair near the desk, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had discovered. She planned all of this. The missing items, the mysterious key bringing me here, but why? Margaret smiled warmly. Because she knew that being queen consort would be one of the most difficult roles you'd ever undertaken. She wanted to give you what no one had ever given her. A place to keep the parts of yourself that the world doesn't need to see. As if responding to some unspoken cue, a section of one wall began to glow with soft, warm light. Hidden lighting revealed another chamber beyond, larger than the first, filled with what looked like a lifetime's worth of treasures and memories. Welcome to Queen Elizabeth's real legacy, Margaret said softly. This is only the beginning. The larger chamber took Sarah's breath away. Unlike the intimate candlelit room they had just left, this space was illuminated by modern LED lighting hidden behind carved moldings, creating a warm, museum-like atmosphere. The ceiling was higher, painted deep blue with tiny lights that resembled stars. It felt like standing inside a jewelry box designed for giants. Margaret led them through the entrance, her movements confident despite her age. Her Majesty spent countless hours here, especially in her later years. She said it helped her remember who she was before the crown, and who she hoped to remain despite it. The walls were lined with glass display cases, each one containing carefully arranged collections. Sarah moved closer to examine the nearest case and found herself looking at what appeared to be children's toys. A small stuffed corgi, with one ear missing, a set of miniature teacups, and a wooden horse on wheels, its paint worn smooth by countless small hands. These were hers and Margaret's, Camilla said softly, reading a small placard. Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, before the abdication changed everything. Look at this, James called from across the room. He was standing before a case filled with love letters, their edges yellowed with age. Letters from Prince Philip dating back to when they were teenagers. Thomas had found something even more extraordinary. In the center of the room stood a recreation of a simple living room, complete with floral wallpaper, a well-worn sofa, and family photographs on side tables. It looked nothing like the formal rooms of any royal residence. She called it her ordinary room, Margaret explained. Every piece of furniture came from homes she visited over the years. The sofa from a mining family in Wales, the coffee table from a farming family in Scotland. She wanted to surround herself with reminders of the real lives her subjects lived. Camilla sat carefully on the sofa, running her hands over the worn fabric. I can imagine her here reading, thinking, being just Elizabeth instead of Queen Elizabeth. Sarah discovered another section dedicated entirely to regrets and difficult decisions. Glass cases contain newspaper clippings from challenging moments in the monarchy's history, alongside handwritten notes from Elizabeth reflecting on what she would have done differently. One note, dated during the difficult period surrounding Princess Diana's death, read, I failed her and I failed the people who loved her. A mother-in-law should protect, not judge. A queen should comfort, not hide behind protocol. How do I live with being both? She never showed this pain publicly, Sarah observed. That was her greatest burden, Margaret replied. She felt everything deeply but was trained to show nothing. This room became her place to feel freely. At the far end of the chamber, Camilla found something that made her stop completely. Behind glass was a wedding dress, not the elaborate gown Elizabeth had worn for her public ceremony, but a simple white dress with hand-sewn flowers and a short veil. Her private wedding dress, Margaret said, joining Camilla, the one she wore for a small ceremony just for family, before the public spectacle. She said it was the only time she felt like a real bride instead of a symbol. Next to the dress was a case containing baby clothes, each item labeled with a child's name and date. Charles's first outfit coming home from hospital, red one tag. Anne's christening gown, hand-sewn by Elizabeth during late-night feedings. James had discovered what appeared to be a small movie theater in an alcove. "Margaret, what's this?" "Her Majesty's private cinema," Margaret replied. She would come here to watch home movies, family holidays, private moments with the children. Christmas mornings before the cameras arrived. Thomas was examining a wall covered with maps, each one marking places Elizabeth had visited not as queen, but as a private citizen. Small pins marked places I was happiest and places I wish I could return to. "She took secret trips?" Sarah asked. "Very few and always heavily disguised," Margaret confirmed. Once every few years she would spend a day as an ordinary person. Visit a market, sit in a cafe, ride public transport. Those days sustained her. In another corner, Camilla found the most surprising collection yet, a workshop area with half-finished craft projects. Knitting needles, watercolor paints, a pottery wheel, and shelves of books about ordinary hobbies. She learned something new every year, Margaret explained. Pottery in her 60s, oil painting in her 70s, even guitar playing in her 80s. She said learning kept her young and reminded her that being queen didn't mean she couldn't still be curious. Sarah discovered a sealed letter, addressed to the detective who helps Camilla find this place. With Camilla's permission, she opened it carefully. "Dear Detective," she read aloud, "by now you understand that this discovery was orchestrated carefully. I needed someone objective, someone trained to see patterns and uncover truth, to help Camilla realize that being royal doesn't mean losing yourself. You have helped her find not just my treasures, but hopefully the understanding that she, too, deserves a space to be human." The letter continued. "In the chest beneath my writing desk, you will find items that don't belong to the royal collection, but are precious beyond measure. They are my gifts to Camilla, to help her create her own secret sanctuary when the weight of duty becomes too heavy." Margaret led them to an ornate wooden chest that Sarah hadn't noticed before. Inside were items that clearly came from Elizabeth's personal collection: a simple gold bracelet, a leather journal with blank pages, a small key that looked newer than the one that had brought them here. "What does this key open?" Camilla asked. "A room at Clarence House that you've never seen," Margaret replied with a smile. "Her Majesty had it prepared for you 3 years ago. It's behind the bookshelf in your private study. The same craftsman who built this place created a smaller version for you. She built me my own secret room. She said every queen needs a place to remember who she was before the crown and who she hopes to remain despite it." Thomas had found another surprise, a guest book with signatures dating back decades. As he flipped through the pages, he found familiar names: Margaret Thatcher, Nelson Mandela, and many others. But these weren't formal state visit signatures. These were personal notes. "Thank you for showing me your real self." Thomas read from one entry. "In a world of masks, your honesty was a gift. She brought selected visitors here?" Sarah asked. "Very rarely, and only when she felt they needed to understand the person behind the position," Margaret explained, usually during difficult times when important decisions had to be made. She believed that authentic leadership required authentic understanding. As they continued exploring, each discovery painted a picture of a woman who had lived an extraordinary public life, while desperately trying to maintain an ordinary human heart. The chamber contained 70 years of private moments, hidden fears, secret joys, and the accumulation of a lifetime spent serving others while trying to preserve herself. "There's one more thing she wanted you to see," Margaret said, leading them to a final case. Inside was a simple wooden box, the missing memory box that had started their entire search. "But this box is empty," Camilla observed. "No, Your Majesty," Margaret smiled. "It's waiting." She said, "Your memories will fill it just as hers filled this room. The empty box is your beginning, just as this room was hers." Camilla stood holding the empty wooden box, tears streaming down her face. For the first time since becoming queen consort, she felt the full weight of what Elizabeth had sacrificed for duty, and the incredible gift she was being offered in return. "She understood," Camilla whispered. "She knew exactly what this role would cost me." Margaret approached gently and placed a comforting hand on Camilla's shoulder. "Your Majesty, there's something else. Something I was instructed to share only after you had seen everything else." She led them to a small alcove they hadn't noticed before, hidden behind what appeared to be a bookshelf. As Margaret pressed a hidden panel, The shelf swung away to reveal a cozy study with a desk, comfortable chair, and walls lined with personal photographs. This was her writing room, Margaret explained, where she recorded her private thoughts about the monarchy, about leadership, and about the women who would come after her. On the desk lay an open journal, its pages covered with Elizabeth's distinctive handwriting. The visible page was titled Letters to Camilla and dated just 2 months before her death. "My dear Camilla," the entry began, "I know the press has not always been kind to you, and I know that my own coldness in the early years added to your burden, but I have watched you for decades now, and I have seen something precious that I hope you never lose: your ability to remain genuinely yourself in a world that demands performance." Camilla sank into the chair and continued reading aloud. "You laugh when things are funny, cry when they are sad, and speak honestly even when diplomacy might be safer. These are not weaknesses in a queen consort, they are superpowers. The monarchy needs someone who can show the people that royalty doesn't mean abandoning humanity." Sarah noticed that James and Thomas had stepped back respectfully, understanding that this moment was deeply personal. Margaret, however, remained close by, clearly having been present for many such intimate moments over the years. "Keep reading, Your Majesty," Margaret encouraged softly. The journal entry continued, "I have spent 70 years perfecting the art of being what others needed me to be. I was dutiful when they needed stability, stoic when they needed strength, and distant when they needed mystery. But I fear I forgot to show them that queens can also be human. The world is changing and the monarchy must change with it. People no longer want untouchable symbols. They want authentic leaders who understand their struggles because they have faced struggles too. This is your gift to the crown, Camilla. You know what it means to be criticized, to be misunderstood, to fight for acceptance. Use that knowledge." Camilla's voice caught as she read, "In this room I leave you permission to be imperfect. Permission to show emotion, to make mistakes, to learn and grow publicly. The monarchy doesn't need another perfect statue. It needs a queen consort who can laugh at herself and cry with others." Margaret opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. These are her plans for modernizing certain royal protocols. Changes she wanted to make but felt couldn't come from her because she was too much a symbol of tradition. She hoped they might come from you. The folder contained detailed proposals, allowing more casual interactions with the public, reducing formal protocol at certain events, and creating new traditions that felt relevant to contemporary life. She wanted me to be the change she couldn't be, Camilla realized. "Not just wanted, Your Majesty. She planned for it," Margaret corrected. "Every interaction you two had in later years, every piece of advice she gave you, every time she defended your place in the family, it was all preparation for this moment." Thomas had been quietly examining another section of the room and called out softly, "Your Majesty, there's a television here with what appears to be recorded messages." Margaret nodded. Her Majesty recorded personal messages for significant moments she knew she would miss. Your first Christmas as queen consort, difficult anniversaries, and moments when she thought you might need encouragement. She made videos for me, dozens of them. She said that while she couldn't be there in person to guide you, she could at least offer her voice when you needed it most. Sarah felt profoundly moved by the depth of Elizabeth's planning and care. "Your Majesty, may I ask you something personal?" Camilla nodded, still clutching the journal. "How does this change how you see your role, knowing that she planned all of this specifically for you?" Camilla was quiet for a long moment, looking around the room that represented a lifetime of hidden thoughts and suppressed emotions. "I think I understand now why she lived so long. She wasn't just serving as queen. She was preparing the way for those who would come after her." "And now?" James asked gently. "Now I realize that I don't have to choose between being authentic and being royal. Elizabeth spent 70 years proving that duty and personal sacrifice could coexist. Maybe my job is to prove that duty and personal authenticity can coexist too." Margaret smiled warmly. "That's exactly what she hoped you would understand. She used to say that you were the bridge between the old monarchy and the new one, someone who could honor tradition while making it relevant." Camilla opened the empty wooden box again, this time seeing it not as a loss but as a possibility. "I know what the first memory will be," she said softly. "Today. Finding this place, understanding her gift, realizing that I don't have to lose myself to serve others." "There's one final thing," Margaret said, pulling a small velvet pouch from her pocket. "Her Majesty asked me to give you this when you were ready." Inside the pouch was a simple gold ring, much plainer than any of the formal royal jewelry. Engraved inside the band were the words, "For Camilla, remember who you are." She wore this ring every day under her gloves, Margaret explained. It reminded her that beneath all the ceremony and protocol, she was still the young woman who had fallen in love with a prince and decided that love was worth any sacrifice. As Camilla slipped the ring onto her finger, she felt something shift inside her. The weight of duty was still there, but so was something new. Permission to carry that weight in her own way. "Margaret," she asked, "will you continue caring for this place?" "If you wish, Your Majesty," though Her Majesty did suggest that you might want to add your own keeper when the time comes, someone you trust completely, someone who can help you maintain your own secret sanctuary. Sarah realized that she had just witnessed something extraordinary, not just the discovery of hidden treasures, but the passing of wisdom from one generation of royal women to the next. Elizabeth had found a way to reach beyond death to offer guidance, support, and most importantly, permission to be human. "Detective Inspector," Camilla said, turning to Sarah, "I believe our mystery is solved. The missing treasures weren't stolen. They were placed exactly where they belonged, with the memories that made them meaningful." But even as she spoke, Sarah sensed that this discovery was only the beginning of something larger. Elizabeth had left more than memories and treasures. She had left a roadmap for transforming the monarchy itself. As they prepared to leave the secret chambers, Margaret stopped them at the entrance. "Your Majesty, there's one more thing." Her Majesty left specific instructions about sharing this discovery. Camilla turned back, still wearing Elizabeth's simple gold ring. "What kind of instructions?" Margaret pulled out a sealed envelope marked, "After the discovery," in Elizabeth's handwriting. "She wanted you to have choices about what comes next. You can keep this place completely private as it has been for decades, or you can find ways to share its lessons with the world." "Share it how?" Sarah asked. Margaret opened the envelope and read, "If Camilla chooses, she may gradually reveal selected parts of this collection to the public, not as a museum, but as windows into the human side of monarchy, to show that queens can be strong and vulnerable, dutiful and authentic, traditional and progressive." The letter continued in Margaret's voice. "The people need to see that their leaders are human beings who struggle with the same emotions, fears and hopes that everyone faces. This could be my final gift to the British people, permission to see their royal family as both symbols and human beings." James looked concerned. "Your Majesty, revealing something this personal could be risky. The press might sensationalize it." "Or," Camilla said thoughtfully, "it could change everything. What if people understood that being royal doesn't mean being perfect? What if they saw that duty and humanity can coexist?" Thomas had been examining some of the letters and documents more closely. "Your Majesty, some of these items could revolutionize how people understand Queen Elizabeth's reign. Her private thoughts about major historical events, her real feelings about difficult decisions." "That's exactly the point," Margaret said. "She spent 7 decades being the perfect queen, and she achieved something remarkable. But she also paid a tremendous personal price. She wants future royals to know they don't have to make the same sacrifice." Sarah realized that they were discussing something far more significant than hidden treasures. This could change the entire relationship between the royal family and the public. "Yes," Camilla agreed. "But it would have to be done carefully, thoughtfully. Not all at once and not without consideration for other family members." Margaret nodded. Her Majesty anticipated that concern. She prepared separate letters for Prince William, Prince Harry, and other family members, explaining her reasoning and asking for their understanding. "You have letters for them too?" "I do." She wanted everyone to understand that this wasn't about breaking with tradition, but about evolving it, about showing that the monarchy could be both timeless and timely. As they walked back through the underground corridors toward the castle proper, Camilla found herself thinking about the future differently. The weight of her role hadn't diminished, but the fear of losing herself in it had. "Margaret," she said as they climbed the stairs toward daylight, "I want to see my room at Clarence House, the one Elizabeth prepared for me." "Of course, Your Majesty. I have the key." 2 hours later, they stood in Camilla's private study at Clarence House. Margaret approached the tall bookshelf that covered one wall and pressed a hidden mechanism. The entire shelf swung inward like a door, revealing a smaller but equally beautiful version of Elizabeth's secret sanctuary. This room was clearly designed with Camilla in mind. The colors were warmer, the furniture more comfortable and contemporary. Instead of formal display cases, there were cozy reading nooks and spaces clearly meant for relaxation and reflection. "She had this built 3 years ago?" Camilla asked in amazement. "She supervised every detail," Margaret confirmed. "She said you would need it more than she ever did, because your path to the crown was more difficult and more public." Sarah noticed that this room already contained some items: photographs of Camilla's children and grandchildren, books on gardening and cooking, and comfortable clothes hanging in a small wardrobe. "She wanted you to know that you could be a queen consort and still be yourself," Margaret explained. "The grandmother who loves cooking, the woman who laughs easily, the person who cares deeply about causes close to her heart." In the center of the room was a writing desk similar to Elizabeth's, but this one contained modern technology alongside traditional pen and paper, a computer, tablet, and even recording equipment for making videos. "She thought you might want to document your own journey," Margaret said, "for the queen consort who comes after you, whoever she might be." Camilla sat at the desk and opened a leather journal that had been placed prominently on its surface. The first page contained a letter from Elizabeth. "My dear Camilla, if you are reading this in your own sanctuary, then you have found not just my treasures, but hopefully yourself as well. This room is yours to fill with your own memories, your own struggles, and your own wisdom. The question now," James said gently, "is what you want to do with everything you've learned today." Camilla looked around the room, her room, and then at the faces of the people who had shared this extraordinary day with her. Sarah, the detective who had helped uncover the truth. Thomas, the administrator who had unlocked doors that had been sealed for decades. James, her loyal protector who had supported her through everything. And Margaret, the keeper of secrets who had dedicated her life to preserving another woman's humanity. "I want to start with the letters to the family," Camilla said finally. "They need to understand what Elizabeth was trying to do, what she was offering all of us." "And then?" Sarah asked. "Then I think we begin the careful process of showing the world that being royal doesn't mean being unreachable, that queens can cry, laugh, make mistakes, and still serve with dignity." Margaret smiled. "She would be so proud to hear you say that." "There's something else," Camilla said, looking directly at Sarah. "Detective Inspector, Elizabeth's letter mentioned that you were meant to be part of this discovery." "I don't think that was accident." Sarah felt her heart skip. "What do you mean, Your Majesty?" "I think she chose you not just to help find her treasures, but to help tell this story. To help the world understand what we discovered today. You want me to document this? I want you to help us share it properly. As someone objective, someone not caught up in royal protocol or family dynamics. Someone who can help people understand that what we found today isn't just about one queen's secrets. It's about the future of the monarchy itself." Thomas cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, this could be the beginning of something revolutionary." "Not revolutionary," Camilla corrected with a smile. "Evolutionary. Elizabeth spent 70 years proving that tradition could survive change. Now it's our turn to prove that authenticity can strengthen tradition instead of threatening it." As the afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows of her secret room, Queen Camilla began to understand that finding Elizabeth's treasures had been just the beginning. The real treasure was the permission to be human while serving something larger than herself, and the opportunity to help the monarchy evolve into something that could inspire rather than simply endure. But as they prepared to leave, Margaret had one final surprise. "Your Majesty, there's something else. Something I was instructed to tell you only if you chose to move forward with sharing this discovery." "What is it?" "You weren't the only one Her Majesty prepared for. There are other rooms, other sanctuaries for other members of the royal family, and there are other keepers, people like me, who have been waiting for the right moment to reveal them." Sarah felt a chill of excitement. "How many other rooms?" Margaret smiled mysteriously. "Let's just say that today's discovery is only the beginning of a much larger story." 6 months later, Sarah Mills stood in her office at Scotland Yard, looking at a framed photograph that had never made it into any official royal collection. It showed Queen Elizabeth in her secret sanctuary, wearing casual clothes and laughing genuinely at something off-camera. The photograph had been a gift from Camilla, with a note that read, "Thank you for helping me find not just her treasures, but myself." The world had changed dramatically since that extraordinary day at Windsor Castle. Gradually, carefully, and with the full support of the royal family, selected revelations from Elizabeth's secret rooms had begun to transform public perception of the monarchy. The first disclosure had been simple: a few photographs of Elizabeth as a young mother, tired and overwhelmed, trying to balance royal duties with caring for small children. The public response had been overwhelmingly positive. People didn't see weakness, they saw relatability. Sarah's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Camilla, calling as she did every few weeks to discuss the ongoing revelations. "Sarah, I wanted to let you know about this week's announcement," Camilla said, her voice warm and confident in a way that had developed over the past months. "We're going to share some of Elizabeth's letters about her mistakes and regrets. How do you think people will react?" "I think they'll be relieved to know that even queens question their decisions and wish they could do things differently. It makes leadership more human, not less dignified." Sarah had watched Camilla's transformation with admiration. The woman who had once seemed uncertain about her role had emerged as a powerful advocate for authentic leadership. The secret room at Clarence House had indeed become her sanctuary, and the public had begun to see a queen consort who was both royal and real. "Any word from the other keepers?" Sarah asked. "Margaret introduced me to 2 others last week. There are rooms for William and Catherine. For Harry, even one prepared for Princess Anne. Elizabeth apparently spent years creating private sanctuaries for family members she thought might need them. And they're all willing to participate in this gradual revelation?" "More than willing. William said it's the first time he's felt like he has permission to be human in public. Catherine has been using her room to process the pressures of raising future monarchs while trying to give them normal childhoods." Sarah smiled, remembering Elizabeth's foresight. She really did think of everything. "There's something else," Camilla continued. "The documentary is almost finished. The one you've been working on with the BBC. When do you think it will air?" Sarah looked at the rough cut sitting on her desk. The documentary, titled The Human Crown: Queen Elizabeth's Final Gift, would be the most comprehensive look yet at what they had discovered. It included interviews with all the family members, footage of the secret rooms, and most importantly, Elizabeth's own recorded messages explaining her reasoning. "Next month," Sarah replied, "right before the anniversary of her death. It feels like the right timing. I think she would approve. Speaking of approval, I have some news that might surprise you." "What's that?" "The king wants to meet with you. Charles has been following everything you've documented, and he wants to personally thank you for helping our family find a new way forward." Sarah felt honored, but also slightly nervous. "When?" "Next week, if you're available." "And Sarah?" "He wants to discuss something called the Authenticity Project." "What's that?" "A formal initiative to continue what we started, to help other institutions, government, business, anywhere people serve in public roles, understand that authenticity can strengthen leadership rather than weaken it." After ending the call, Sarah reflected on how far they had all come. The missing treasures that had started this journey had led to something far more valuable than diamonds or emeralds. They had discovered a roadmap for modern leadership that honored tradition while embracing human truth. Margaret Thornberry had become something of a celebrity herself, though she remained characteristically modest about her role. She now oversaw a small team of sanctuary keepers who helped maintain the various secret rooms and continued Elizabeth's work of documenting the human side of royal life. Thomas Whitmore had been promoted to chief royal historian, tasked with ensuring that future revelations were handled with appropriate context and care. He had become an expert in what he called progressive preservation, the art of honoring the past while making it relevant to the present. James Harrison had adapted his security protocols to protect not just the physical safety of the royal family, but their emotional authenticity as well. He now worked closely with media advisors to ensure that increased openness didn't compromise necessary boundaries. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation had been in public opinion. Poll after poll showed that people felt more connected to the royal family than they had in decades. Seeing the human struggles behind the ceremonial roles had increased respect rather than diminished it. Sarah opened her laptop and began typing her final report on the case. Not for official police files, but for her own documentary work. She wrote, What we discovered in those underground chambers wasn't just one queen's hidden treasures. We found a carefully planned transition from a monarchy based on mystique to one based on authentic service. Queen Elizabeth spent her final years not just serving as a symbol, but preparing a foundation for a more human form of leadership. The missing items that brought us together were never really missing. They were exactly where they belonged, with the memories and emotions that gave them meaning. And in finding them, we found something far more valuable: permission to be real in a world that often demands performance. 6 months later, I can confidently say that Queen Elizabeth's final gift to her family and her people wasn't just personal treasures, but a new understanding of what it means to serve with both dignity and humanity. She proved that you don't have to choose between being authentic and being worthy of respect. The monarchy will never be the same, and that's exactly what she intended. As Sarah finished writing, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. It simply read, "There are more rooms and more stories. Are you ready for the next discovery? A friend?" Sarah smiled and looked again at the photograph of Elizabeth laughing in her secret sanctuary. Somehow she suspected that the Queen's gifts to the world were far from finished being revealed. The empty wooden box that had started their journey was now displayed in Camilla's secret room, slowly filling with new memories, new struggles, and new wisdom. But it was no longer just Camilla's box. It had become a symbol of every person's right to remain human while serving something larger than themselves. And in offices, schools, hospitals, and countless other places where people carried the weight of responsibility, Queen Elizabeth's final message was beginning to take root. You can be both dutiful and authentic, both strong and vulnerable, both a symbol and a human being. The treasures they had found weren't just diamonds and gold. They were permission to be real, courage to be vulnerable, and the understanding that true leadership comes not from perfection, but from the willingness to serve others while remaining genuinely yourself. As Sarah packed up her office for the day, she realized that what had started as a simple case of missing jewelry had become the beginning of a quiet revolution in how people understood the relationship between service and authenticity. Queen Elizabeth's greatest treasure hadn't been hidden in secret rooms at all. It was the wisdom she had carefully planted in the hearts and minds of those who would continue her work of making leadership more human. The Royal Watch had indeed taken Camilla's items, but what they had found inside would change not just the monarchy, but the very meaning of authentic service to others. And that, Sarah thought, was a treasure beyond any measure.